Now, our next panel, you'll be relieved to hear, is not going to feature me, because these guys are going to do their own thing. They absolutely don't need me on irritating them with silly questions. We're hearing a lot these days about the metaverse. David Bowie was there with the metaverse 22 years ago. And here to tell you more about that, this is going to be a really fascinating talk, I think. We have two pioneers of interactive technology who've been working in this field for a long time, from back in the days of laser discs through to touchscreen jukeboxes through to online virtual worlds. These guys have been at the cutting edge, and among the many famous names that they have worked with is David Bowie. So please welcome to the stage to tell you more about this fascinating subject. It's Thom Kidrin and Ron Ray. You guys?
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you for coming today. And all of you, of course, are David Bowie hardcore fans. And obviously we're here to celebrate David's life, his legacy, his creativity. And this is an area that I think people are not that familiar with. David worked in many mediums, but people aren't familiar with David's work in the digital medium. The beginning of his internet experience was with Ron, who was one of the co-founders of Ultrastar, which was David's first internet, and I'll let him speak about what BowieNet was about. And as part of BowieNet, we created the first virtual world, which you hear, as the announcer said before, the first metaverse. And David was the first musical artist to have a metaverse in 1999. And I'd like to start actually by having David, in his own words, talk about what the metaverse meant to him and what it was he expected from it.
It feels like a virtual community, yeah, which I'm not quite sure how you differentiate between that and a real-time community, real-life community. There's something added, not actually knowing who the other person really is in reality, but only having a sense of that person. It's almost metaphysical. It's an extraordinary feeling. I enjoy it very much. I enjoy it because I don't quite understand it, and I think I've always enjoyed the things that I don't really understand. I suppose I presuppose that the end result will be short samples of any particular work, whether it be musical or visual, and then pay to download the entire thing. I would imagine, in a sort of conservative way, that's what will happen. And there'll be some artists that will wish to, not having the restrictions of a corporate kind of contract, will have the options of saying, well, look, I need some money, so you're going to have to pay for this. But if you do this for me, I'm also going to give you some stuff as well. Which I think, that's the kind of, I'd like to see that. And I would do that. Right. That's what I personally would do. You buy this, but if you buy this, you get this.
Right.
At least 2 or 3 times a week I go into the rooms and on my site again, anonymously generally, but sometimes I have a name that they know me by.
I embrace the idea that there's a new demystification process going on between the artist and the audience. It's a communal kind of thing. It's about the community. Oh yeah, I'm talking about the actual context and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment, where the interplay between the user and the provider will be so in simpatico. It's going to crush our ideas of what mediums are all about.
So there you have David and I'd say that probably the best word to sum it up is prescient. He saw 22 years ago where we are today. And in developing this world, working with David, the notion originally was, can we take some of the backdrops from the set and create an environment that would let the user go into that world and explore that world? And within that world, the big top, if you will, you could then listen to music, you could have interviews, you could buy e-commerce products, you could meet with David himself and meet with guests of David in the environment. At the same time, as David was a chameleon, you could, in the form of avatars, assume different characters and identities. And as such, we created these different avatars that represented different types of people that David felt appropriate were part of you, the fan base, wanting to accept these personalities. And as we move into today's age, we now have what's called NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. Effectively, they are a digital asset that you can collect in your digital wallet. One, hopefully appreciate and value, but at the same time, you can use them or the utility for extra benefits that would accrue to you as a holder of an NFT. So you can scan the codes that you see on the stage or at the booth over there and look at that and pick up a free NFT, win possibly a contest for a guitar that's been signed by the speakers that played with David, and at the same time moving forward into what we'll show you shortly is the future, the next iteration of this. So we're going to give you a quick fly-through of the Bowie world. Again, remember, this was built in 1999, given the limitations of the bandwidth of the computer, the graphical capabilities. There were no graphic chips at the time. So quite outstanding for the time, and compared to today even, I think it's admirable. So if you can play the next clip on Bowie World.
I know when to go out.
Welcome to my world. What do you think?
Get things done. It's chaos out there.
Put on your red shoes and dance the blues. Dance to the song they're playing on the radio. This is ground control to Major Tom. You've really made the grade and face the strain to changes.
You look ridiculous.
Wanna see a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man. Time may change me, but I can't trace time.
And there'll be some artists, not having the restrictions of a corporate kind of contract, will have the options of saying, if you do this for me, I'm also going to give you some stuff as well. It's almost metaphysical. There's something added, not actually knowing who the other person really is in reality, but only having a sense of that person. It's almost metaphysical.
Tipping around, keep my brains on the floor. These are the days.
So, you can see the quality of the work that we developed with David and with his son Duncan, intimately involved in trying to represent at that time what they felt would be experiences that the fans would want to meet each other and to meet with David and guests of his in that environment. As you could see, we had an art gallery in which all David's art was represented. You could click on the art and purchase a copy of that art as a lithograph. You could go in the Bowie store and you could buy all the merchandise, some of the stuff you see outside. So all this was curated by David at the time with Duncan, with an eye towards the future, because this is where we were going to do concerts and streaming, which at that time was not possible. So I'm going to introduce Ron Roy, who, as I mentioned before, was the co-founder of Ultrastar, and Ron will tell you some of the genesis of how this all came about, and then we'll talk further.
Thanks, Tom. So backing up the timeline a little bit, David, one thing about him, and I was fortunate enough to not only work with him and meet with him many times, he was a very, very hands-on guy. Everything that he did, he put his hands on. So my business partner at the time, Bob Goodale, I wanted to do a throw out to him. He's no longer with us, but great guy, very innovative. He used to run Isolar back in the day. Bob and I came up with this idea about fan clubs. And believe it or not, the genesis started with the Beatles, because back in the day, my mom was part of the Beatles fan club. So we started thinking, okay, Bob and I started thinking, and the Monkees. I don't know if you remember the Monkees, but it was the Monkees. But anyway, so we started thinking, what can we do on the internet, this thing called the internet in the mid-90s that nobody else is doing? And we came up with this fan club idea. So Ultrastar as a company started as a fan club where people could come in, pay us a fee to get into the fan club, but also do things. They could, communicate. They could go into chat rooms. They could buy merchandise. They could be around people that, they wanted to be around. So that's why you join a club anyway. So we came up with an idea, and then Bob said, let's take this to David and see if we can get him as our first client. So had the pleasure of that was the first time I had any interaction face-to-face with David. He came in just like two good technology business guys. We did our pitch. We had the PowerPoint, and we were showing him our vision and our architecture. And so after about 2 hours, he finally says, what do you guys need? What's the next step? And we're like, we're out fundraising right now. And he's like, how much money are you trying to raise? And we said, about $1 million to get the company going and get the engineers in and get the developers in. And so he said, I'm really interested in working with you guys. And he said, be in touch soon. And the following week, his business manager gave us a call and said, David wants to be your first client. And he said, I got more good news. David also wants to be your first investor. And I got a third piece of good news, which is on my wall back at my home in the United States, which he actually wants to be a business partner in Ultrastar. He sees the future of how people are going to interact, and he sees that something is there. So we started Ultrastar. Our first client, our first project was BowieNet. I don't know if anybody here were any BowieNet members? We got some BowieNet members. Look at that. Beautiful, beautiful. So that was the first. You're going to hear this, I think, a couple of more times as Tom and I speak, but that was the first artist-supported ISP in the history of the internet, the very, very first one. When you came into BowieNet, whatever your first name was, it was like ron@davidbowie.com. If you're a Bowie fan, that's a pretty cool email address. And I will say this, and this kind of set up the stage when I first met with Tom to say how was it working with David? And I gave Tom this exact thing. I said, with BowieNet, David was involved with everything. Like every art comp and every font and every color and every piece of marketing we were going to do, just everything. And we would have meetings and he would send emails. He's like, I'm looking at this, I'm doing this. It was amazing how a man with everything else going on in his life was just so hyper involved with launching this. And at the end of the day, I remember one time I was speaking with him and we were just talking and he said, do you know why I do this? Do you know why I'm doing what I do and why I do it? He said, it's all about the fans. It's all about the people out there who have taken this journey with me or the new people who haven't discovered me yet. And that's one cool thing about technology is you got a lot of people who, maybe the younger generation didn't know a lot about David, but maybe he could reach them by using technology because that's what they were into. I'm sure a lot of people out there have kids like I do. And, it's video games, it's esports, and that's where their minds are at today. So anyway, we launched BowieNet off to a great, we got an amazing start. It became very, very successful. We did so many cool projects. I could spend 45 minutes up here talking about the projects. Great thing about this, so 6 months later, Dave was like, okay, BowieNet's rocking and rolling, it's doing great. What do you got for me next? And just by digital technology serendipity, Thom Kidrin kind of fell into our universe with Worlds and his technology. So Thom introduced what Worlds was all about, and then we just said, okay, we got to take this to David. And that's when Thom and I had our first meetings and first involvement together. And and I knew getting to know him and working with him, it was a slam dunk. I mean, this was going to happen. Maybe you guys don't use that term over here, slam dunk, but it was going to be a winner for sure. And same thing he did with BowieNet. He and Thom will get into this more than I will, but just his reasoning was, as long as I can be involved, because this is where I think the future is. This is where I think people are going to communicate. He was all about community, and not only like the super Bowie fan, but just any music fan or anybody who liked pop culture or art. He just wanted communities and spaces where people could come in and collaborate with other people and meet new people and share ideas with people. Along the way, listen to music, look at film, put their own artwork in there, their own poems or their own little short films, whatever it was. It was irrelevant, just as long as people were being interactive with each other. And that was a key word in his vernacular throughout my entire time knowing him, was let's keep people interactive. So that was a great thing. So that was kind of the timeline. And then I think it was in '98 when we ended up first meeting and getting together and starting to do stuff. And then Thom's team came in and we all collaborated, and they ran like everything that they needed to work with David. And like Thom said, his son Duncan was actually our intern at Ultrastar, so kind of had to give him the job, right? Didn't have a choice, but I will say this, he was an amazing intern. I mean, absolutely amazing intern, very involved, wanted to know everything we were doing, and very collaborative. And if you met him, you would never say, oh, he must know Bowie somehow. So, but anyway, so then we got into getting involved with Thom and his team at Worlds and looking at, okay, what's the next generation of environment? And we were just fortunate enough that this environment happened to be three-dimensional, virtual, and after Thom showed us everything that he had done, we just said, go. And I think David took less time to say yes to BowieNet and Ultrastar than he did to World. So he's like, okay, what's next? So Thom, tell him what's next.
Well, as Ron was alluding to, it was very interesting in the development of Bowie World to watch the interaction between David and Duncan, because as Ron said, if you have kids or younger people, pick up technology right away. And this was a learning experience, but it was a father-son relationship. So in this relationship, Duncan was effectively showing David how things could work. Now, David's innate creativity and imagination immediately saw it. And as Gail said earlier in the presentation, as the first presentation, David gave space for creatives to work within. And this was a new digital palette that he was working with. So intuitively, he knew he wanted to have a space that was sort of like a massive club. It was a world that expressed all of his sensibilities in what it was that he wanted the fans to participate in. At the same time, it's impossible for him to meet with all the fans, but in a virtual world, you can have thousands of fans, and he could be there meeting each of the people in private rooms and in general. In fact, if you paid attention and you saw there was a minotaur that was floating in a church, that was David's personal avatar. And a little bit of inside on the raw side, David's suggestion was, well, when I come online with the Minotaur, would it be all right if I had a heart-on? Whatever you want. So the Minotaur is one of the NFTs that we'll be minting. We haven't dropped it yet. But what we're going to be doing, and what we have done and announced today, that the first drop of 100 limited NFTs, which are avatars in some environments of what you saw, are available just to the show conference attendees right now. So next we're going to just show you a little bit about the NFTs, what they look like, what they consist of, and then we'll talk about what the future looks like for going forward with this.
And there'll be some artists, not having the restrictions of a corporate kind of contract, will have the options of saying, if you do this for me, I'm also going to give you some stuff as well. And I would do that. But if you buy this, you get this.
Fame, put you there where things are hard.
enjoy it because I don't quite understand it.
It's just the flame, the virtue just to keep you in.
So as you can see, he said he didn't quite understand it, which was challenging for him in a creative and inspiring way. And some of the NFTs you saw are the avatars. Each of you received, I think, in your welcome packet, a deck of cards. Those are collectible, but on those cards are QR codes that you can get a free NFT if you register, and you can go into a lottery or a raffle that we have and perhaps win the guitar that was signed by Woody and some of the other guests today, so highly collectible. And part of the NFT notion is basically you have a digital asset that can appreciate in value, but at the same time has utility, meaning it can be used for other things. So the other things in this particular case are the chance to win the guitar, discounts on other Bowie merchandise, new things that will be coming out, which we'll show you shortly as what's coming next, and continue to expand the legacy of David Bowie and perhaps David Bowie's return to us in a form that's not a physical form, but in the form of a highly advanced avatar with artificial intelligence to be able to interact with you going forward. So we have technology that we're developing, and we'll show you now what's coming next.
I don't think we've even seen the tip of the iceberg.
Quite a games freak. It feels like a virtual community, yeah. Which I'm not quite sure how you differentiate between that and a real life community. There's something added, not actually knowing who the other person really is in reality, but only having a sense of that person. It's almost metaphysical.
The actual context and the state of content is going to be so different to anything that we can really envisage at the moment.
So, as you can see, the level of content quality is highly advanced in the 22 years. But from the very beginning, as I said, David had the foresight to understand where this was going. Now the world, Mark Zuckerberg, is embracing the metaverse. Billions are being poured into it. But in the final analysis, it's not just technology. It's about what is the content that the technology is used for. And content is only good if it's being embraced by users or fans by appreciating and having an entertainment experience that they can participate with each other. And David was all about community. So this is what we represent, what Bowie World represents, what David was part of, and what Ron introduced me to when we got together. So Ron, let me turn it over to you to take any questions from anybody here.
One last thing I do want to say is that David had such a philosophy. Because at the end of the day, while we're behind technology, we're behind the keyboard, we're behind the monitor, we're still humans. But he loved the idea of being able to go into the keyboard, go into the monitor, and be whoever you wanted to be, and feel safe. And that's a big, big thing. And that's why we were really attracted about Worlds too, because you could be yourself. You could do an avatar that looked like you, or you could be an avatar that was an animal or a space creature. It was an extension of who you wanted to be without any barriers. So, and that was a prerequisite of what he wanted for people, his fans, and he just wanted that open. Again, I say it a lot when I do speeches and talks, but he was all about communication, no matter where that communication took place. So anyway, I just wanted to close that up with another kind of exclamation point of where he was 22 years ago and where the world is now today. So that just shows you his, he did it his whole entire career, but his genius, his foresight, whatever crystal ball he looked into, it always seemed to work.
Anybody have any questions since we don't have a moderator? Everybody.
Ask anything. Ask me my favorite Bowie song. Okay. Station to station. What? Excuse me?
Whatever happened to Bowie next?
Well, when David came off the road, we just got to a point where he wasn't going to, support it when he, stopped touring. And Live Nation actually came in and did a deal with Ultrastar. And so we ended up just, Ultrastar was basically shut down in 2006.
With
Repeat that?
the Bowie net, we were getting a chance of getting CDs that
Oh.
we could never get.
Right.
Entry into miss the market in that one?
Yeah, when you sell a company, you're kind of like, you kind of put your hands in the air. We did our thing. We got it out there. Were you at any of the Roseland Ballroom shows? Kit Kat Club? Oh, London. You did the London ones. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Think about an artist of David's stature. If you were a member of BowieNet, like he did private, like we did 3 shows. We actually did 2 shows. I'm sorry, over 3 nights at the Roseland Ballroom, only for BowieNet members. We did a private show at the Kit Kat Club, so only for BowieNet members. And again, this was his, like this is, that he wanted to take care of the superfan. That's like, this is my community. I want to give something back to them that they can't. And to your point, sir, like we would do, and actually Tom and I did we did a bundled CD with, was it Yahoo?
Yahoo Internet
Life, where we gave away tracks and we had access to BowieNet, we had access to Bowie World. Those special features were really nice to have. Yeah, that young lady's, yes. I got you next. Excuse me?
Well, we can't speak for the estate, so yeah. That's hopefully the intention.
So I've got a friend of mine who's done this sort of thing, rather than that, with gaming. So my question is, has any other artists sort of run with this after Bowie? Like, do you think Bowie's done this? Is anyone else?
Oh yes, we've done Aerosmith World, Run DMC, Hanson, if you remember them.
Mbop, come on, you all know the words to Mbop.
And we're speaking to a number of big artists right now because of the legacy of David and that credibility as well. Anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you. Oh, there's one. Yes, in fact, Bowie World is still accessible. So people do go into Bowie World. There are still fans that are there. And it's probably, I would say it is the longest running 3D virtual world on the internet today. Non-stop for 22 years. So yes, it is. So you can go back in time to Bowie World.
There's also a great website called the Wayback Machine, and you can visit websites back into like 92, I think. Yeah, it's with the Internet Archive. It's called the Wayback Machine. So you can see a lot of pictures.
Well, I want to thank you all for showing up today. We'll be here after. If you want to speak to us, we've got some flyers here. You can get the QR codes and register to see if you can win from the raffle or stop by the booth. Yes? In an avatar form, yes.
So I'm going to give one plug too. So there's also, with Bowie World, we also created a fan app for the convention. And like Tom said, we're going to give away the guitars. We're going to give away some signed books from Woody.
Right.
We've actually got an amplifier also signed. So we're going to give those away. But also throughout the whole weekend, if you take pictures and videos of yourselves, we're going to put them on all the monitors. And we're also going to send everybody here, if you register for the app, we're going to send you a personalized digital scrapbook of your whole weekend. So it'll be your pictures, your videos, all kinds of mementos that you're not going to be able to get anywhere else. Things about Bowie World, all the artists, the posters, the date, just a lot of really, really nice stuff. So definitely use the app, definitely give us content. But about 7 to 10 days, you're going to get like a 45-second video digital scrapbook all about you. So whatever name you put in there, you're stuck with it. So I think it'll really, really, you'll be something you'll have for forever. It'll be a great memento. And one thing cool, David always talked about being the first. Well, you guys are the first attendees of the David Bowie World Conference. So you are part of the first. So five years from now, 10 years from now, when there's other conferences and other things going around the world, you can never take back the first. So you'll have digital proof you were here. So definitely participate. and the Bowie World app, and the NFT app, and the Bowie World fan app. And you're here all weekend, so you got time. So if you need help downloading anything, just come on over to our booth, and we're all there to help you out.
Thank you all for attending.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, great interview.